I think part of me when I was a firefighter, I didn't work 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. I did shift work. So that allowed me a lot of days off. So I was football coach. I was baseball coach, t-ball coach, soccer coach. I coached all my kids through all their sports because of that. And, that gave me a love for being part of something, not just working for a bigger check. I work so I can meet the goals and dreams that I want to meet.
You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their current portfolio allocation. Now to your hosts, Clark Sheffield and Jace Mattinson.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Another episode of the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is Clark here with my co-host Jace. This is episode 201. Jace, how are you doing? What's going on?
Doing great, man. How you doing?
Good. Doing well. We just had a great interview, a couple great interviews. One was with an electrician. I don't think we featured that job before. Also with Joe. He's a F-18 fighter pilot. So that was pretty awesome to interview him. But yeah, some fun interviews coming up here. Obviously, we just launched Jeremy, episode 200, successful entrepreneur, net worth of $320 million. He was our highest net worth millionaire to date. So fun discussion with him. We discussed real estate, angel investments, goal setting and thinking big, time management, and more, teaching children about finances too. So pretty amazing to hear somebody worth $320 million, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, once again, real appreciative of Jeremy and his time. It's a phenomenal episode. Really cool story. Great advice all throughout the episode.
Yeah, so this week, just as a brief intro, we have Mark. He's a Fire Marshal. Net worth is just about $1 million, just under. So we discuss his investments, retire aspirations, some mistakes he's made, and he was really open about some of his feelings. So thanks again to him for coming on the show. And obviously thanks to all of our millionaires who come on and open up and share their stories. So we received a SpeakPipe message from Thomas and just want to play that and discuss his question. So here's from Thomas.
Hi. I am a new listener. I've listened to 5 of your podcasts so far, and I have a question that I have not heard addressed yet. That is, how do millionaires protect their assets? So an example is I have an investment account that is taxable, and I moved it into an LLC to protect it from creditors in case my insurance doesn't cover a claim against me. But I would like to know how other millionaires are handling this same issue. Thank you.
So, Jace, what are your thoughts there? Protecting assets, protecting money, net worth. What have we heard millionaires do?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is something that I think we could probably do a better job at getting at and understanding and discussing with our millionaires. But the common things that have come up. One, I think there's a different conversation depending on what kind of asset allocation you might have and what kind of investments. Some millionaires might come on and, they may have a primary residence and the majority of their money in tax advantaged accounts or whatever, which in a lot of cases are exempt from creditors. But the main thing is, one, putting those insurances in place to, transfer that risk, whether it be on rental property or primary residence. And then on top of that, adding an umbrella policy that would cause, kind of one more stoppage if there were to be anything, for example, if you had a personal injury accident or some sort of issue happened on your property, putting that umbrella policy in place to be that first stoppage. And then after that, we've seen all sorts of different things where millionaires will structure their assets in LLCs, or they'll put certain things in trusts, or they'll move, one asset to, a different family member or what have you. And some of that gets into the estate tax planning as well as just the asset protection. And there have been a few that have discussed it. We did have an asset protection attorney on. I don't remember exactly which episode that was, but there are different things millionaires will go to an asset protection attorney for in terms of structuring some of these things. But I think on the, for the typical millionaire that we've had on the show, most of them have not gone that route or employed that type of professional for those things. But definitely something to consider, especially as your net worth continues to grow. And if it's definitely outside of, 401k or IRA or those types of things, if you start getting small business assets or, real estate or those kinds of things, definitely something to consider. And, we'll try to do a better job at getting into some of that with some of our millionaires in the future.
Yeah, and I think Thomas hit on it too, right? Llc Protection. So those that have a higher net worth and often have a lot of real estate investments, I think it begs the question of how much do you hold individually in each LLC? So obviously it's easy to say a big property should be held in an LLC, but I mean, we've talked to people that have 50 single family rentals, and how many LLCs should you have for all of those rentals? And then I think you hit the nail on the head with the trust. Obviously, as the net worth continues to grow. I mean, we recently spoke to somebody worth about $100 million, and he said, look, I don't own anything, right? Nothing's in my name. If somebody comes after me, I'm protected. So trust, LLCs, insurance, policies, I think are all good metrics there. So thanks to Thomas for writing in there. If you would like to ask a question, we encourage you to do so. We'll try to talk about these in the intro. You can go to our website, millionairesunveiled.com, hit the Ask a Millionaire tab, and then send a recording. And we'll play your soundbite during the show, either to us or to Millionaires. So thanks for writing in there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And let's get into today's episode with Mark.
Mark, do you want to just give us a little about your background or what you're up to now?
Yeah, so 50 years old. I've been in the public fire service my whole life since 17 years old. Been a firefighter, paramedic, captain, fire marshal, and now I work as a deputy fire marshal at a local fire department.
Wow, that's pretty remarkable. Yeah. Been a fireman for your whole career?
It is, yeah. When in high school, I wanted to be a lawyer. I used to watch LA Law and was totally captivated by that. And we had a lot of fires where I lived, so I joined the fire department to help out. And I went on my first fire and was hooked, and I loved it. So the lawyer went out the window, and I've just, enjoyed my life helping people and, just making a living at what I love.
So did not go to college, is that correct? Went straight into the fire service?
Correct. So you do have to take some college courses, but back then when I started, back in the late 80s, it wasn't required. So I did go to college, got my associate's degree, got my paramedic certificate, and then got hired in the early 90s with a 2-year degree.
Wow, that's pretty remarkable. And what is your net worth today?
Today, my net worth is right about $964,000.
Man, almost a millionaire. I love it. How is that broken up?
Sure. So my home, the current home my wife and I live in, we have equity of about $282,000. I have a pension through the state that is I could sell for $288,000, and they run it. I don't get a choice of what they do with that money. I have what's called an IAP, and that's $160,000. And that is it's time managed. So the closer I get to retirement, they change the management style for me. I don't get to touch that at all. Then I personally put into what's called a 457 plan. I got $87,000 in that. And I have that pretty diversified. And then I have an HRA account, which for medical supplies, which is a great way to earn tax-free growth. And that's in a growth fund. I have that aggressive growth. My wife at her work has a 403B. And she has about $100,000 in that, and that's a blended fund through Vanguard. And then just to round it off, we have about $37,000 in vehicles.
In no cash, or just little cash on in savings account or something?
Yeah, so we are in the midst of paying off our debt because we had a realization about 9 months ago when I turned 50 and went, oh man, we need to fix something. So yeah, all our savings went to paying off debt. So we have a $1,000 emergency fund.
And that's paying off consumer debt or home debt, or what kind of debt?
Yeah, so we still had student loans because I went back and got my bachelor's degree. My wife got her bachelor's for nursing. And then we had consumer debt. We had some personal loans. We had some outstanding tax loans, some car loans. And we just have one more loan to pay off for our RV. So we're almost there.
Awesome. And then house will be after that, or house is already paid off?
No, we owe $255,000 on the house. We just actually refied, so we got a nice rate, 15-year fixed. So that hopefully will be paid off in about 5 to 7 years is our plan.
Okay. So I want to back up here, Mark. We talked a little bit before the show, and you kind of give you some insight into your journey and waking up at 50 and trying to calculate retirement since you were eligible. Just for our listeners, do you mind kind of explaining the journey up to 50 and what that realization looked like for you.
Sure, yeah. I got hired in 1993. I was 23 years old, never even heard of the term investing. And when I got my job, I sat down with an investor. He came to our work and said, hey, you guys can put into this 457 plan. You throw in $50 a month, and when you retire, you'll be a millionaire. And I'm like, that sounds good to me. So I put in my $50 a month, picked a random fund. I had no idea how to do it. And then I pretty much forgot about it and never paid it another mind at all until a couple of years ago. And I wasn't even close to being a millionaire. It had $80,000 in it. So I turned 50. I knew I was going to be eligible for retirement in a few months. Looked at what my pension would be, and it wasn't even close to meeting our bills. And I thought, man, I have done something really foolish. And I should have actually paid more attention when I was younger, because I could have been in a lot better spot than I am today.
And you were looking at that. I mean, did you kind of rewind and ask yourself, not in a bad way, but just was my mindset to be dependent on the pension? Is that kind of what you were thinking, in your 20s and 30s and 40s?
I don't think it was. I don't think I was ever going to just strictly rely on my pension, because I don't think I was that focused on my future years. I was more worried about, I've had a couple boats. We go on vacations. My wife always has a nice car. So we were just saying whatever money came in, we'd spend it, and we didn't worry about the future. I knew I had a pension. I know I had Social Security, and I always thought those would just be there, even though I never thought about it. But I do, in retrospect, look back and regret some of those, the lack of focus that I had for the future.
When you had this change at 50, when you went to your wife or your wife came to you, or what was that dynamic like in discussing where you had been and where you decided that you wanted to go going forward?
Well, I think, my wife and I, we like to take nightly walks. So we talk about, our dreams and what we want to do in retirement. And then, as you get closer, you sit down and start actually looking and crunching the numbers. And when we started doing that, we were realizing that we weren't going to be there as soon as we wanted to be, and that we were going to have to work longer than we hoped to work. So I think we did really good about coming together and finding a plan on how to get there as quickly as we can. So, we're not doing the FIRE movement, but we're getting close to that. We're just doing it in our later years because we want to retire early.
Yeah, it's interesting. You come at this saying, hey, I'm 50. I woke up and decided that I wanted to change, how I was going about this. We have some people who, grind away in their 20s and 30s. And we always ask the question, trying to figure out what that balance looks like, because somebody who might be in their, 20s and 30s, they might miss out on some of the experiences that you had, in your 20s and 30s that you can never really go buy back because your body's not the same or your environment's not the same or things change. You say you regret maybe changing, in terms of your investing allocation or putting more away earlier, but surely you don't regret a bunch of those experiences that you had and, all the vacations or whatever that you might have had when you were in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, correct?
Yeah, I don't regret that at all. I think I just regret the lack of intentionality. When I was younger, I think I could have done both, because I could have, instead of putting that $50 a month into some random account that I didn't know what I was doing, if I would have taken a more active role through my 20s, 30s, and 40s, because that $50 stayed the same through my 30s, 40s. I never changed it. It shouldn't have been $50. It should have been a percentage. So it would grow as I grew in my income. And I just didn't do that. So I think I could have done both. And if I'd been more focused on budgeting, living within my means, I think I could have got all of that done. I still enjoyed my life, still had those experiences, and still been better prepared for retirement.
So how much in debts did you have, and how much have you already paid off? What's your progress?
Let's see here. So in January, we had, I think, because we started January 1st, we had $72,000 in debt, and we're down to the last $15,000, so almost $60,000.
Wow, good for you. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's I guess excluding the home, right? So just the loans on everything else. Wow, good for you. That's a nice dent, right? $60,000 in a year, and we're not even done with the year.
Yeah. So hopefully we should be. We were hoping to have it done in 2 years, but I think we'll have it done in 13 months. So.
Wow, good for you. And then you're going to go on Dave Ramsey and do a debt-free scream?
My wife hasn't gave me a yes or a thumbs up yet, so I'm not sure.
Awesome. So you had a goal you said 2 years, right, to pay it off?
That's what we thought, 2 years. And then, once you realize what you can do when you're really intense about it or budget well and say no to the things you're not used to do, it goes a lot faster than you think it will. I think people have a lot more power in their income than they think they do.
So expound on that. How so? Isn't it harder to say no than you thought it would be, or is it easier?
I think for the first week it was hard. But once you get that first paycheck and you realize your debt went down instead of stayed the same, and it wasn't 2 days after getting paid that you're broke already, then because you're on the budget, right? So the budget really allows you to spend whatever you plan on spending. So there is no, oh, geez, I'm broke, because you're staying within your plan. So I didn't have a problem saying no. At the 6-month mark, I think I got a little tired because I do love, having a white coffee at the local coffee shop, and those get expensive. So I just found a good alternative that I can make myself, and that satisfies me. So especially when you see progress.
Sure. Yeah. And that was going to be my next question is, what do you say no to, or what has really changed? Have there been drastic changes made?
So I think, a lot, we got rid of eating out. So we don't go to restaurants all the time because, we have 2 older boys and there's a lot of sports and driving around and you're tired. We both work and it's like, I'm tired. I'm going to get pizza tonight, and that there's a 50. We used to go to the movies a lot, which COVID helped with that, of course, because you can't go to the movies. So saved a little there. But, I was spending $200-$300 a month just on coffee.
And your wife, you shared with us, she now works outside the home as well, right? And she actually went back to school, which is pretty amazing, to become a nurse.
Yeah, she did. So she, when we first met, she worked in a pizza place, manager there. And once we started having the little babies, she went ahead and stayed home with the kids. We were super blessed. My job in the fire service, allowed us one income. So once the kids were in school full time, she went back to work, worked in a medical office for a local doctor, and she loved working there and thought, I want to be a nurse. So she went to school and, oh man, she rocked it. So now she works full time and makes great salary at a local hospital, and she works in critical care and does a great job taking care of people. So.
Wow, that's amazing. Good for her and good for you guys. Alrighty, let's take a quick break from the interview with Mark. Whether it's investing in your kid's college fund or just wanting financial freedom, there are countless reasons to build up your nest egg. We've kept our eye on an under-the-radar investment, but it's always been exclusive to the ultra-wealthy. Finally, there's a way to get access to this $6 trillion asset class. Prices have nearly doubled S&P returns from 95 to 2020. When we heard about it, we wanted to keep you in the loop. It's all thanks to one startup democratizing access to the exclusive investment. It's not real estate, gold, or anything to do with crypto. They've been featured in the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Bloomberg, and others. And lucky for you, we're given a few passes to skip their waitlist and join about 200,000 other members. If you wish to secure your spot, head to masterworks.io/unveiled. Again, that's masterworks.io/unveiled. See important disclosures at masterworks.io/disclaimer. So I've been on the mailing list for Masterworks for a couple of years and been following some of their stuff. They've sent emails. It's kind of syndicated art, so it's interesting. And at the very least, you can see what people are investing in. And Jason and I, at the beginning of the intro or beginning of the show next week, we'll talk a little bit about art because it's something we haven't talked about, but I think it's an interesting concept. So thanks again to Masterworks for supporting the show. When you support our sponsors, you support our show. And without any further delay, let's get back into the interview with Mark. So just as we talk about this story, your story and paying off debt and coming to this realization, is there something as you've started to pay this off that's been harder than you thought it would be? Or vice versa, is there something you thought was going to be hard to give up, but it actually wasn't so bad? Or what stood out here as your message to somebody who's maybe starting to pay off debt and feels overwhelmed, at least initially, by it?
Right. So I think it's the bigger loans to me that feel overwhelming. So our biggest loan was our RV, and some of the little tiny like credit cards or the little tiny student loans, those you can pay off really fast. So you get a lot of momentum there. But when you run up against a big debt, it takes really some fortitude to work through that, but it's worth it. And when you do get through one of those big debts and you can, roll that payment into the next one, it makes it worth it. So you have to kind of stick to it. And if you fall off, you fall off. The next day you get back on and you just move forward. Don't look back when you make a mistake and eat out or buy something stupid you didn't need,
Sure. So let me just switch gears here. I want to ask you about your pension funds that you have at work and then one of the retirement account. How is that invested? You said you don't have a say in it, but I'm just curious, how do they invest that for you?
So I'm what's called a tier 1 employee. So all my money goes into the tier 1 account, and the state invests it very conservatively because they are not supposed to lose any money. And unfortunately, that doesn't keep up real well. When the market's down, it drops. And when the market goes up, it doesn't go up as fast as everything else. So it's unfortunately like a lot of state pensions, it's behind. But hopefully that's not going to affect me too much. But that I don't get a say. It's under legislative control, and it's invested the way they said it's going to be invested. They have a fund manager that takes care of it.
Yeah. And then what's the payout look like for you? How long do you get it, and how much do you get, and how is that calculated?
So it's calculated based on the age I retire, and then expected life, how long they think I'm going to live, and then whether or not I pick a beneficiary and how long they think that beneficiary is going to live, of course. So, the longer they got to pay it, it gets a little lower. And then you want to know the number I actually am supposed to get?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I retire I'm planning on retiring when I turn 58, and I'm hoping to get about $9,000 a month off of that.
Oh, wow, that's a lot. $70,000 a year?
Well, yeah.
More than that. I did this the other night, too. I can't do my math. Sit here and do accounting all day, and then you can't do it. So over $100,000, right? $108,000.
Yeah, just somewhere right in there somewhere.
Wow. And how much do you spend annually now? Or let me say pre-debt payments, how much did you spend? And then now, how much do you spend? I guess those are probably different numbers if you're saving as much as you are, right?
Right. So let's see here. How much do we spend? So right now, our monthly budget is about, I think, $5,000 to $6,000 that we spend. That comes in and goes out, and the rest gets put to debt. So, and then once that's over, the rest of what we bring in will go to investments, saving up for new cars, going, not new cars, but new to me cars, and going on a trip here and there. Nothing crazy. Paying for kids' college.
That $9,000 a month, I mean, that's got to be worth, 1.8 to 2.5 for you. I mean, roughly, $9,000 a month, if you're looking at the drawdown, I mean, if you conservatively look at a 4 to 6% return and withdrawal rate on that, that's actually a substantial amount of money.
It is. That's why they don't have tier 1 employees anymore.
Well, my point is that I think maybe you've undervalued your net worth a little bit. I mean, $9,000 a month, essentially you have an annuity. And if you put a value on that, rough math, I mean, at 6%, you're looking at, 4 to 6%, you're looking anywhere from 1.8 to 2.7 for that. And obviously you make the comment that they don't have tier 1 employees anymore. I mean, that's a substantial amount of change. I mean, you get $9,000 a month guaranteed for you and your beneficiary, correct, for essentially life, right?
Correct. Yeah. That's the weird part is if I sold my pension, I would only get roughly $300,000 out of it. So that's the weird part.
You don't think you could retire off that, Mark?
I think I could. I don't think it would allow me to do what my wife and I have planned in retirement. So
you want to live a little more lavishly.
We don't actually. We're pretty laid back. My wife and I want to do some medical missions in Africa. We'd love to go do YWAM ships and Mercy ships. We want to do a bunch of giving to some of the missionaries in our church. So honestly, we just want to be able to spend time helping and giving to other people. We don't really want to go, to Monaco and, gamble the roulette whale, or there might be a scuba diving trip in Greece in there somewhere, but nothing crazy. So
no, good for you. Good for you.
Realistically, though, if you put that pension, you said you would get that today, that $9,000 a month, roughly.
No, no. So if I retired in January when I was eligible, I would have got $5,000 a month.
Wow. So another 8 years, you've almost doubled, right? You said 58 you're planning. So, I mean, being that classification in tier 1 you bring up, I mean, that's pretty substantial. You work another 7-8 years and almost double the value of that pension, correct?
That's the plan.
Does that make you want to keep working longer to make it even bigger?
No.
How come?
So, because I'm really not into making it as, I mean, if I was worried about making it as big as I could possibly make it, I'd work till 70 or 80, but I want to make it to where I'm hitting my goals and where I can do my wife and I's retirement dream, and then we can do it. It's I think part of me when I was a firefighter, I didn't work 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. I did shift work. So that allowed me a lot of days off. So I was football coach. I was baseball coach, t-ball coach, soccer coach. I coached all my kids through all their sports because of that. And, that gave me a love for being part of something, not just working for a bigger check. I work so I can meet the goals and dreams that I want to meet.
Yeah, Mark, we started this off a little bit that you'd had all these regrets. And, as we get into this story, I mean, it's pretty remarkable, right? Like you may have these regrets of maybe not intentionally planning financially some of the things you've done. But really, I mean, the career choice you made, the love and the passion that you have for it, being able to do a lot of the things, like you mentioned, coaching teams and doing all these other things and being in a position now at 50. And I know you still have some debt that you mentioned that you want to pay off and are aggressively paying that off. But, all things considered, you've gone on a phenomenal journey. You're going to be able to contribute to the things that you're passionate about. You've got this great pension lined up. I mean, for all intents and purposes, you're well over $1 million in net worth based on what you've explained to us. And it's pretty phenomenal. I just got to tip my hat to you. In maybe your eyes, you think you haven't intentionally planned it as much or as well as you wanted to, but all things considered, you kind of stuck on a path and stuck with it and, designed your lifestyle and your life around your career in a way versus the other way around. And you're really going to come out in a pretty remarkable fashion, come 50, 58, whenever you want to retire, correct?
I hope so.
So as you look into the future here, when did the desire to do some of the things that you've mentioned take shape in you and your wife's, evening talks? And with that, how did you decide on what you needed financially to kind of make that happen?
Right. So when my kids or my oldest, when he was about 12, we went on a mission trip to San Francisco. And we did Youth with a Mission. And that was so life-changing, getting to work with people who are homeless on the street, maybe have some addiction issues. But the love they give you and the love you give back to them was really, really changes you as a person. And I think that's what it did. That's when I got my love for helping other people, was trying to teach my son to care for other people and show him, what true need looks like. I ended up learning that as well. So I think that's where a lot of that love comes from. Now I just want to do it more. I just really want to help people. And so I think that's where that came from. And, my wife's a nurse, so it's just in her DNA to help and love on people. So
how did you?
And I've been doing it my whole life. So
yeah, and how did you financially come up with what you needed to make that happen for yourselves?
Well, I think it stems from two different ideas. The first is my wife and I make a really good salary, and about 4 days or 5 days after payday, my wife would say, because she handles all the bills, and she goes, "Hey, we're broke. Stop spending money." And so it got to the point where it's like, how can we be broke? We make so much money, and our bills don't seem that big, but we were always broke. She's always like, "Okay, no more money. Stop spending. No more coffees." I'll be like, "All right, fine." So I think it's like, well, if I make this now and I'm broke, I guess I need that much when I retire. So I'm kind of using that as a goalpost, and I'm starting to learn that that's probably not necessarily true, because a lot of my money I don't get to see because it goes to taxes and Social Security, and some goes into retirement, and some goes to debt that we won't have when we retire. So I think I may not need as much as I do, but that's where part of it came from. And then a lot of them you go to a calculator and you go 4% rule, and you're like, okay, if I need this much cash, then I work it up, and it says I need like 2.3 million to retire so I can travel a little bit. And so there's so many different ways to look at it. I'm not really sure how much I need, because I haven't really sat down with a financial professional and said, how much do I need? They usually just say more. So
right, we're programmed in society in one way or another to feel that way, aren't we?
Yeah.
Is there anything you specifically have done with your children as it relates to learning about money, or maybe teaching them some of the things you've learned, or maybe cautioning them some of the mistakes that you've made?
I think that, I didn't really get into my money until my one son was 19 and my youngest is 15. So I think they're learning right along with me about budgeting, about being intentional, about not acquiring debt. and just having a plan. So it's really just being open and honest with my kids about where we're at, what we make, and where the money goes. And they're smart enough to learn right along beside me. So I think that helps out.
Yeah. So moving forward to your career now, Mark, and around the firehouse or with the people you work with, is money often talked about, or is it kind of hush hush?
Yeah, around my job, we talk a little bit about money. Sometimes when someone's getting close to retirement, we'll talk about it. But there isn't a lot of open conversation about how much you should be saving. There's not a lot of specifics and items like that, which is weird because, we're a government agency, so everybody knows what everybody gets paid because it's all public knowledge. So
Right.
Yeah. So, and I wish that when I first started in the fire service, that they would have been a little more, I don't know, maybe educated me more, but it's not their responsibility to do that about how to retire.
Yeah. As you look back on your life journey and this financial journey, you talk about some experiences. You mentioned a couple boats and RV. What was worth the money on to you, and what was not worth the money on?
Oh man, the best day a boat owner has is when he buys his boat and when he sells his boat, right?
That's the saying, right? The best day of your life is when you buy a boat. The next best day is when you sell it.
Yeah, that's right. So a boat is just a hole in the water you throw money into. I don't think I regret those decisions. I loved both my boats. We had a blast on them, fishing and skiing and tubing with the boys. The RV we still have and use it all the time. We love it. So I think those purchases were good purchases. They weren't lavish. I'm not buying a $50,000 yacht. These were $12,000 boats, and they use them for a while, and you sell them, and then you buy another one when you're ready to do it again. So I don't regret any of those purchases at all. So I regret the debt that I encumbered to have that joy. So.
Did it ever scare you, Mark, along the way as you were working that you had these debts and how much in payments were you making a month? Did it make you nervous?
It never did. So my wife and I, we'd never been behind in our bills. We never missed a payment. So as far as I was concerned, we were healthy. We were making all the right decisions because we had
You were
great
normal,
credit.
right? That's what Dave Ramsey says. You're normal.
We are normal. Normal is not enough, I've learned. So.
And so now, as you've gotten a grasp on this, and I think worth at least a couple million, right? With Jace's explanation of this pension, has the financial security or the financial, knowing where you're going to be at least in 8 years, right? When you retire, has that affected your happiness, your confidence levels, or not so much?
So I think that here in the last month or two, when I've never even looked up my net worth till, a month ago. It's getting better. I'm starting to see now because since I've never handled the bills, and now that I'm doing it with my wife, and we do a budget together, and I'm starting to see with our debt gone what our monthly requirements are going to be, and I'm seeing that we're actually beginning to move the tide to where I'm comfortable as a person. I think my wife's kind of comfortable. My fear is starting to go away because I know the first part of this year when we first started our debt, getting rid of our debt, I was nervous. I didn't know when I was going to be able to retire.
Yeah. And you mentioned the budgeting. I know you budget now. How do you do it? What's your method?
What's our method? We use an app, every dollar. It's pretty easy to use.
Dave Ramsey's app. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty easy.
Every dollar gets a job.
It gets a job. We don't use it the way he likes it because we don't. But we just use it as our guardrails. We have all our categories. We put what we're going to spend in them, and then we don't worry about sinking funds and what goes to debt. If we stay within our lanes and don't go over budget in certain categories unless it's approved by both of us, then we know we're going to have a nice chunk to put on debt. So
yeah.
Yep.
Did you pay attention to credit score at all throughout your life? Was that, it's becoming more and more popular now. You hear people talking about credit score or needing a score to borrow money. Dave Ramsey's still obviously against that and credit cards, but was that a big thing for you?
So when I was a kid, I saw my mom's credit score once when she bought a house, and when I found out what that number was, I think my mom's was like 829 or 825 or something. And I'm like, oh man, I want to be, like my mom. I want to get that big, awesome credit score. That's success. And I think when this January, I looked at mine and it was like 815 or something. I was so close. And I knew it was going to start going down as soon as I started paying off debt. And sure enough, it did. It went down when I started paying off debt. But I really wanted a great credit score. That to me, that meant success. But when I actually started learning about what a credit score is, it's not really success. So,
I mean, isn't that amazing? You start paying off your debt and your score starts going down.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
how stupid is that?
Yeah.
So let me just jump into some rapid fire questions, and then we'll come back and finish with a couple. And I think Jace maybe has a couple left. So let me just ask you, what's the most expensive pair of jeans you've ever purchased?
Probably $50. Some that aren't on sale. Yeah.
Okay. Most expensive shoes?
Probably 150. Good pair of hiking shoes.
Okay. What about a car? And I'm going to toss in a boat for you.
Most expensive car would be my wife's. That was a GMC Acadia.
How much was that?
That was about $40,000.
Okay. Most expensive meal out that you've personally paid for?
I would say probably $350. Nice anniversary dinner.
Okay. What's your predicted retirement age and net worth? We talked about, have you ever used a financial advisor?
No, I've talked to a couple on the phone, interviewing them. I've never used a financial advisor or sat down with them in a long time. We have a financial advisor come into our work, every once in a while, but I wouldn't really consider that a financial advisor. That's just, they handle all the retirement accounts for all the firefighters. So,
as much as you're comfortable sharing, what's been your range of annual household income?
Sure. So, when I first started in the fire service, I actually was eligible for food stamps. I made $18,000 a year my first year, $24,000 a year, $1,800 a month. And I was super excited for that. This year, my wife and I, between her salary and mine, we should net about $240. Or not net, I apologize, gross about $240.
Wow, good for you. Good for you. And what is somebody who starts in a similar career as you, what do they start at now? Do you know?
Yeah, so where I work, a firefighter will probably start out about 60,000, top out about 90. Captains are going to be higher than that. Captains who run the crew.
And it's really after you get a nice raise after, what is it, like 5 years or so?
So in the fire service, you get a raise every year, 4 or 5 years, and then your top step.
Okay. So just wrapping it up here before Jace asks a couple, what does it mean to be happy and fulfilled to you? What are you searching for? And what part does money play in that?
I think being happy and fulfilled means getting to spend your time on what it is you love and whom you love to spend it with. So for me specifically, that's spending time with my family, my church family, and just doing the things we love to do together, whether it's camping, helping people, doing some work somewhere to bless somebody. That's happiness to me. And I think what money allows you to do is to keep the lights on and the belly full while you do it. So
I think that's a great answer. Do you plan on spending more or less or about the same as you head into retirement?
I think we're going to spend more at first into retirement just because of some plans we have. We want to tour the U.S. in an RV for a couple of years. We want to spend some time in Europe traveling. We want to do all that mission trips with Mercy ships and YWAM and, use our medical certifications until they expire. But I think once we're done with all the crazy, then I think we're going to want to just, sit back and see if we can't make a legacy for our boys.
Do you share with them where your net worth is and where your goals are at?
We have not. So I don't think they need to know that now. I think they need to know that we work hard and that we are going to do our best to help them. But we don't share our specific numbers with them at all.
What about with family or friends? I mean, do they know you're essentially millionaires?
No, they don't.
And do they know that you're aggressively trying to pay down debt, or is this something that you and your wife are just doing and tackling just the two of y'all?
No. So my she's one of our biggest, cheerleaders for us. She actually got on board too and started paying off her debt, and she beat us. So
that's pretty awesome.
Well, sorry in advance if your friends or family find out.
That's okay. That's all right. Well, it doesn't matter. I can't touch any of it till I retire anyway. So
yeah, totally. So just to wrap up here, what would your advice be to somebody who's just starting out, or maybe even the boys that you have? What kind of message would you leave them with as it relates to the journey that you've been on?
I think I'd want to tell them to get on a budget, learn about what investments you're capable of making now, and make sure you intentionally follow those investments along and make sure it's the best thing as you move forward. Because I think it's that intentionality the budget that's going to help you do that instead of living the way I lived, which was paycheck to paycheck. And as long as I could meet all my debt payments every month, then I was doing good. So,
have you always lived in the same house? And if not, how many houses have you purchased?
So this is our fourth house that we live in now. We bought our first house in 2000, fixed it up, sold it, made a little money, moved in, built a house after that, sold it, made a little money. Then we bought a farm, which was awesome. Raised my kids on a farm so they know where their food comes from. Some of the lessons on a farm are hard, of course, but they definitely have a respect for food when they eat it. And then we sold that and bought this house.
And were all those house purchases, you said you made a little money, were they fairly intentional in the planning process of your financial journey, or were they job related, or?
Nope. So I've worked in the same location my whole life. And my wife and I always wanted to make sure that, as we sold a house and bought a house, that it was going to be something that benefited us financially, even though it met where we're at in our life now. So we always held a house for at least, 7 years, so it would appreciate and earn us some value for the next house. And we've always upgraded as we went. So,
and done 30-year mortgages, 15-year mortgages on all of them?
Yeah. So every mortgage has been a 30-year mortgage, and we just went to our first 15 years. So we refied just now for a 15-year mortgage.
Okay. The other thing, Mark, that you mentioned is you've got an HRA in your portfolio. That's not something that we've touched on much on the show. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that how that benefits you personally?
Right. So through my work, they put in a couple $100 a month into my health retirement account. And when I retire, that becomes mine. And whenever I spend whatever's in there on a appropriate healthcare item, it's tax-free. And then I get to control where that HRA is invested. So every time they put money in, it goes into an account that I have set up to be at aggressive growth. And, the concept is since as firefighters, we retire early because it's so hard on our bodies. Firefighters typically retire around the age of 55, and it's supposed to make your extra secondary insurance payment until you get Medicare for 10 years. So that's the goal. That's how it works.
And you think that will end up it'll work that way for you in terms of what you have in there?
Hopefully it's at 21,000 now. I expect in the next 8 years, it'll probably at least double. It might get upwards of 50,000, and that should pay my, my insurance until I can, hit 65 and get Medicare.
Okay. And that's pretty unique to your, I guess public service. There's several of them out there that have that option. There's not as many that I know of or that I've heard of, at least in corporate America. Is that your understanding as well? Just because you're in that world with an HRA and have the ability to control that. I've only heard of a few other companies that even have some sort of, most of them just have a straight HSA.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same thing as an HSA. I don't know what the difference is.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, they are, but there's a few unique things about the HRAs that, and really they're I think they're geared more toward public service anyway. But there's some reimbursement arrangements. That the employer is completely funding it, whereas HSA employees also have an option of funding it. In some cases, depending on how the plan is designed, the funds may not leave with you as you go because the employer is funding them. But in your case, and in the cases of most public service ones that I'm accustomed to or aware of, those funds, you do have that option. But in corporate America, the companies that do have HRAs, they are 100% benefit for the employee until the employee is no longer an employee. And then they become basically the pool of funds, go for that company's employees only. Whereas that HSA, you can keep it and take it with you no matter where you go.
Well, I might have to stop by the HR department tomorrow and confirm that.
You may be okay. That's just how in corporate America some of those work is you don't get to take them. But I think in public service, and I'll have to double check myself too, but that those sometimes you can take with you.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. Well, once again, that's Mark, net worth well over $1 million. He says 964, but it's well over $1 million with the pension. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Clark Sheffield and Chase Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website at millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.